So what I'm thinking is that we kind of move from ensuring compliance. I mean, we'll still obviously be doing that, but I think our role will shift more to more of like an overseer, and especially those of us with lived experience having the ability to contribute into this AI pool, as it were, to make sure that it doesn't do anything crazy.
Cool. So you're going to be the AI overlord here?
I think you just said. If my worry, I guess, being in this field, of course, is that AI will somehow get it and then replace my job. But looking at how well AI actually gets stuff, I think maybe that's not so much of a concern because it takes a lot of training and like was said, garbage in, garbage out. And so AI is doing a lot of improper practices, at least until I call it on it. So I'll hop on, Claude or something and say, how would I make this sort of a component? And it'll give me something and that may or may not work. And then I'll say, well, but what about the accessibility in this aspect? And then I'll say, oh, you're right, Deneb. Let me fix that for you. And so it does at this point. But will it get to the point where it doesn't have to do that? I don't know.
Okay.
I'm behind you.
Oh, okay.
Either way. Right, it just made me wonder. We're actually shooting ourselves in the foot right now. For training. I mean, I don't want to necessarily doing that, but it just was a thought.
That train somebody else's AI, or you can load your own on your own laptop that's not going to the cloud. There's a huge difference. And I've had experience with people who say they like privacy, but don't have the patience to do it on their own laptop. Yeah.
Our goal has to be to get it right. Oh yeah, it's going to get it right. Personally, I always tell people accessibility is the best job that I never wanted. And I hope in future we just don't focus on accessibility. We become, I don't know, investment makers or something. But one good thing with our field, if you're lucky and AI can start doing all the low level stuff for us, for example, finding images with alt text equals alt, which I have seen quite often, or a button. Like, you can recognize that sometimes it's been 60%. Hopefully, again, what is the interface? Really like change. Even like work, there are like tens of traffic. You get the good scenario, the bad scenario, yeah. AI gets more work than we have today, or people think they get it right and just we're out of work, having accessibility. So that's train it in the short term to make it.
That there have been over the years in academia, there have been many research projects to Mark Kane, and they typically have all failed. As far as I know, I don't know of any successful one that's marketed commercially, but I don't think it's very successful because they're not robust to get hit against a wall or a sidewalk or a stairway, something like that. Oh, okay.
And project. So our sorry.
Make recommendations on how to fix. I don't have to fix it. But I mean, I can do tests and audits and make recommendations all day long. What percentage of those get fixed by the development teams that have given it? Not that many, right? Like, it's just another. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do with PDF remediation. I can see like adding some of that the magnitude again to get that in there. 3 years of documents. So that maybe there's some way, I can just keep with the complicated things that AI might not be able to do yet. No, limitation. Brandenburg.
You have mitigation. That's why I-
You continue to provide reliable. Compliance, right there. Can you say something? Yes, you might. But you have hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, but get tired. You might this was like something like stick. Then are all the so oh, we have this. Yeah. Then, by pressing that. Yeah, then. More. More right this.
Okay, we got room. Ingenuity.
I'm interested in the install local that you had mentioned. Do you know more about local installs? of
Yeah,
AI?
I know one that's relevant to you. It's installed a tool on AI tool called Llama Vision on my laptop that describes images. It's variable, long descriptions. So by default, it gives a good description of the image. And I tested it on some photographs. An example, I tested it on a photograph of algae, and it named the specific species of algae that was in the photograph, which impressed me. And I did a diagram of what's called software wars between software companies. And it provided a structured report of what was in the diagram, including a lot of stuff that was implied by the diagram, but was not directly So that be used in place of handwritten alt. But what's the appropriate length of it? And how does having a dialogue with it differ from, for example, I did a photograph of Steve Ballmer and it said that's Bill Gates. And in the course of a conversation, convinced it that I'm skeptical about whether this is really Bill Gates or not. So,
I think our biggest struggle often is charts. And when people create tables for charts or long alt text for charts, it's time consuming, complicated, and not consistent. I'm really pinning my hopes on AI being able to generate reliable descriptions of charts.
but one issue with that is domain knowledge. So AI can be primed with domain knowledge about the chart to know what's interesting in the chart, you know, to know what's a trend or what's an anomaly or something like that. But you have to know how to front load the correct information.
We have to master the
Yeah.
absolutely. I always try to recommend complicated charts. Author, please specify 2 or 3 things to look away from the chart.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
generate a table or something. I think it's still to have humans, not to us humans to put the context in.
Yeah, and academics, in my experience, often won't do that. They'll say, well, it was obvious. Why should I?
Obvious.
The question I was curious about the local install, you were mentioning in a visual perspective, right?
The tool, I have on my work laptop, this is a portable laptop for parents, but on my work laptop, I have 3 AI tools installed that are local, that don't send information to the cloud. And my work laptop is a Mac, so I use Homebrew to install the basic stuff that I need for it. And then and these tools specifically on Hacker News. That's news.ycombinator.com. And there are every week, PDF remediation was a discussion before yesterday. And discussions on I can show you actually how I installed these tools. Even though I don't have it installed on this machine, it's a very simple process to install them. But you need to have a fairly powerful laptop to fast enough that for the reply.
Okay, MacBook Pro basically.
With M or M2 or M3 or M4 chip.
It's good. Seems to use here.
Well, I'm on DeepSeek R1, and that's because they're open source, and so I can load them on my laptop. If I use ChatGPT or Claude, which are perhaps better, I have to go to the cloud at this point. Although I think one of them, I can't remember now if it's OpenAI or Anthropic coming out with you can on your laptop. But and I don't think that's when I use for description. I've been told that Mist can also be loaded on your laptop. It's better for image description. No, it's pre-trained. The image based on its pre-trained. That you can definitely. Yeah.
I was asking an M1 or like that.
Of a GPU. Like they have kind of a on the Mac that probably need a GPU. And the Macs don't have that, but they have kind of a deal where the CPU has the GPU embedded.
Yeah, I haven't.
A lot of money then. Because the $10,000.
Cheap, I got 'em.
Oh, okay. Minimum. And way I get around that is I use Google Colab. So there's a tool in the cloud that's called Google Colab that gives you a cheap access to a contemporary GPU for a pay-as-you-go thing, which I've probably spent $1 on it in the last few weeks.
Cheap.
My question is, are there models now that you can that you can qualify training data so I can that I have that are
That is a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. So a workaround that I use for that is called RAG. I forget what it stands for. What does it stand for? Reinforcement augmented, retrieval augmented generation. So you can add to its training set. So for example, when I installed DeepSeek R1, I had heard that it was targeted toward the People's Republic of China's government. So I immediately asked it about Tiananmen Square, Taiwan, and Tibet. So these correct answers about that. So who has put in a used RAG to put in documents giving the other side of the story, and then he saved that in in a new model that's on Hugging Face. So most of the tools that you'll find in the Gen AI world on this website called Hugging Face, and Hugging Face will put whatever you want to throw at them. So there is now a version of DeepSeek R1 on Hugging Face that's not prejudiced in favor of China. That happened. The guy that did that showed how he did it. So you could do it if you want to, but it right. Yeah. Microphone or
not the solution we were.
oh, okay.
All right, yeah, y'all can go ahead.
Yeah, I want to document yours. You can do something similar with Gemini, the one from Google. There are things called Gem, which is basically an isolated AI agent.
Oh.
You can add there, I think, up to 10 PDF files, and also write instruction how it should read those files. I guess it's partly, it's still pre-trained, so I guess it will take a mix of general, what was used for training, plus the information which is in that PDF. So then that probably will be prioritized over what it's pre-trained on. And with correct instructions, like if you have a lot of internal documentation, like how to write code, what are the accessibility practices, that's what you get. You get your agent, which will use those files as a But you need those files, the things that you add, you need to make sure that they're really good and correct. But actually with Jim, you can do the same with ChatGPT, great agent, but I think it's more tricky. You need to contact OpenAI. We did that in our company. We have some partners who created their own agents, but with Gemini, you can do it by yourself. Just, I think there is a big button like create new gem. That's it.
Handheld mic is coming through now according to the chat. So you hold it just like he did. Oh, is the chat on here? Oh,
Yeah, so Mr. Michael, if possible, you may have to make sure yours is up by your mouth as well.
So it's the
No.
finding the right balance.
In terms of creating a chat bot. I was just in a training recently for creating one. And what they can do, you can just load in your websites that you want it to look at, so real specific. There's a tool called Chat Simple that it's limited, I think you can ask like 50 questions a day and then they start, adding money to it as everything, but just to play around with it, it was pretty easy just to, point it to a couple of websites. So there are fewer hallucinations in the AI. Because when you're talking about just looking at the entire website or the web, which, OpenAI does is like scours everything. That's why they talk about the hallucinations, that it's putting things together, and it's making, what's the word I'm looking for? Drawing conclusions based on what it sees out there. And so if you give it a smaller set of information, and that's what Chat Simple will let you do. And I think that's what the same thing you're talking about with the gems, right? It just gives a smaller set.
I'm gonna just, I do. So if I wanted to look at, say, a whole bunch of PDF files from the archive database,
which is a nightmare in accessibility terms.
to look at them, not in terms of accessibility, but in terms of knowing their structure well enough so that I could extract the content in a meaningful way. Is there a way I could do that kind of training on an AI?
There was just an argument about that on Hacker News the other day, and it's not clear to me what the correct answer is yet, because it's pretty complicated, but a lot of people want to be able to parse archive. Archive is the really prominent place where academic papers in the computational sciences are published, and it's spelled ARXIV. And yeah, the papers typically are very inaccessible, but the problem is the same if you want to extract structure. So it always depends on how the PDF was made, what tools. So there are tools that will work on most PDFs, but you have to choose the right tool for the right PDF. So you sort of have to know, and the models don't necessarily know what kind of PDF it is. So you have to figure that out yourself and then feed it to the right model, and it will work.
And I was thinking archive, probably those PDFs are produced in a lot of different ways.
Right.
And most of them probably go through LaTeX.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that came PDF from LaTeX. So the idea of if you could have a bot that would look at thousands of these papers and kind of be able to classify, oh, this is this kind of a PDF, this is that kind of.
That would be great.
This is that, oh, then we can sequence the data by doing this and such,
That would be great. I don't know of such a tool yet, but that's certainly something that a lot of people are thinking about.
I'm not so smart. It sounds really cool. But the best like usage of what was I using? I think I was using just ChatGPT that I found. I'm putting there the, let's say, all the things that, let's say you have a UX session with users, and then you have like a 1 hour, the transcription text of like 1 hour long, which is emotional, chaotic, a lot of jumping between the subject. And that's where ChatGPT works perfectly. You make it, of course, you might read it, you make some notes, but then you put this into any kind of text processor and ask to structureize, to do anything, and the output is perfect. And it worked even better. I use it for better understanding of customer support tickets. We have some, and sometimes they're also emotional, not structured, and it's extremely hard to reproduce what user is saying, and it works perfectly. I just put it, I'm just putting the text and saying, here is, let's say, the message for such and such application that I got in Portuguese language. Please, could you create exact steps to reproduce? And the result is just amazing. Sometimes it generates flows that are just not mentioned in the text of the ticket itself. Somehow it just gives perfect description of what is wrong and where it's wrong, even though if it's not in the ticket itself. Such kind of text processing is amazing. And we have our corporate account is completely secure, so I'm not sure if you should do that on the, in the general.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we have for that case a secure account which share this information. But it's amazing how it understands what is written, even making some assumptions which are not there.
Great. What company is this?
Vinted, it's not known in
Oh, okay.
mostly in Europe. Just another case of probably great progress from AI. I'm not sure. I would like to hear some comment. I was a volunteer at Be My Eyes, you know, that application. And 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago, they said that they are making partnership with OpenAI for image recognition. And that was the last day when I received the call.
Wow.
I hope it's working there. I hope it's successful so that calls just stopped one day.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's sad.
I mean, if it's working, if people are able to see.
But there are so many different degrees of working.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But I think you can, I'm not sure, but maybe there is a possibility to choose if you want to speak with a real person or if you are okay with that image recognition mechanism that they built. I'm not sure. If I would like to hear more information why no one is calling me.
Well, I was gonna say, that kind of goes to our topic of the professional being replaced by AI, right?
I'd like to comment on that professional, but why don't you talk first, because people wait.
Sure.
And apologies, you may have covered this already, but I'm just a bare novice in doing things even like doing a command line, query for this, for people who are just starting up with this. Is there kind of a baseline where you can go to learn it that you would recommend, or specific tool set?
It depends on what you want to, the specific tool sets are good at different things. So I wouldn't recommend a specific tool set, but a good resource, in fact, I should write it on the board, is Deep AI. Which is a company founded by Andrew Ng, who is a pioneer, and he does a lot of free education. I should also mention that, you should, well, I'll just Google these. Hacker News and Hugging Face are two really, really good resources. And they're intimidating at first, but you get used to them. And there's a blogger named Simon Willison who tests a lot of things. That's another good resource. Yeah, and I think his website is simonwillison.net. I'm not sure about that, but you can just Google his name. In fact, I can just Google his name.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure I knew how it was spelled, so I could Google it. Otherwise, I'd get Simon Wilson.
Yeah, it's simonwillison.net. And yeah, here's an annotated, his latest entry from today is about a new annotated presentation creator that he's just developed. Amazing. Yeah, so those are just some good resources if you're just starting out. I think I wouldn't personally endorse a particular tool set. I think it's very, very important to experience a variety of tool sets. And when you're prompting, so I teach a prompt engineering course, and when you're prompting, we find over and over again, I get my students to use a lot of different tools, and we find that a good prompt far outweighs a good model.
Interesting. I've seen a friend of mine who's very good with AI, was kind of go through a lot of inoculations to make and tweak a prompt to get what they want. Test, that failed, okay. Tweak it.
Right, very good. And the prompts can get very long. Andrew Ng, who's mentioned over here, has a weekly newsletter called The Batch. And in a recent issue of that, he mentioned that some of his prompts are 2 pages long.
I think there's I wanted to first go back to that question about people worrying about losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, now you know, let's face it, all employers want to get rid of us. That's just the way it is, you know, so. But I think that thing that the guy was talking about, eating the seed corn, was really important today, so there probably will be layoffs. But what I've found with, and I've only used ChatGPT because, and I'm gonna try a whole bunch of these new ones. But what I've found is, it's your knowledge that takes you on that trip. So if you're like an expert in accessibility and you know some niche for accessibility, it'll just help you be a better investigator in that area. And you know, if you like, they say, oh, they can write programs. Well, I don't think you can write a program with them if you don't know how to program. Now, the cool thing about the AI is you can program the programming language you were never taught, as long as you know what programming languages are supposed to do. And it protects you against all that junk like semicolon out of place and all that.
Very important
All of that
point,
stuff
yeah.
drives crazy. And then, you know, there's some vendor constant that's called WDXW, whatever, you know, and so you can go, what does that constant do? And we'll tell you what it does, you know. And like you were talking about downloading stuff, like if I was wanting to download the thing that you were saying, I would go and I would say, how do I download this to my particular machine? And I did this, and I tell it I have low vision. So then it gives me ways to do it, so I don't have to use my eyes as much, you know. And so I think what's so important is this thing that it's not the AI, it's you using the AI to extend your reach.
Yes.
But the other question I wanted to ask you, and so I don't think we're all gonna lose our jobs because of it. I really don't. I think we're gonna, but of course, you know, employers are jerks, so. We all have, you know, they're gonna fire us all and then they're gonna realize they can't live without it. But, that I know. But the other thing was that the prompt engineering. are you aware of a book in prompt engineering that, doesn't jump right into programming right away? Because I've worked really hard on being able to talk to the chat without using any computer science, ask it questions about computer science. And it was very effective because I wanted to come here and I wanted to be able to tell people how to talk to an AI. And are there books that are written about prompt engineering? The ones that don't jump right into code so that a person can like ease into the thing.
The problem is that large language models are really good at coding. And so that there's a tendency to rush to doing code with them because that works. In my prompt engineering class, for example, I don't require people to have a programming background, but I require them to turn in a Python program. And they are initially intimidated until they find out that all the LLMs can turn in a very simple Python program without much monitoring.
Then oh, well, I can ask the Python program what that command means. I mean, I can ask the AI.
You can ask the AI, exactly. You can ask it, in fact, ask it to generate the program with an explanation of, a line by line explanation of what's going on. That's a pretty common technique.
I was thinking prompt engineering would be so great if you could really do it like in your, whatever your native language is.
Yeah.
And just not have the program, but have discipline.
There's a book by Phoenix and I think this might be a good book. Let me see.
There was a session on Tuesday on called Whiteboard. And they use ChatGPT to create prompts for other AI.
So they would say like, this is our idea, can you write a prompt for us? I want to do this, and it's like, tuk, tuk, tuk.
So all of this kind of shifts the conversation in my mind from where we started, which was talking about generative AI, sort of. So using AI to generate the proper accessible code, which would kind of tend to put us out of business as accessible. If the conversation. So if it were built into a user's browser, and this goes to the image. This goes to the image description software that you was talking about earlier. I wondered if it could be so that people who needed it could ask the browser, would you explain this chart to me? Would you tell me what, this aspect of the chart is doing? And then kind of drilling into the graphic from the browser side or for the user instead of the generator. So what effects of that?
There is browser that allows you to do exactly that. So Firefox you can install your own large language model or any AI tool in your sidebar, and then it will allow you to program using the select the text, and right click on the page and ask simplify the page, describe. So you can ChatGPT to work with the cutting paste and Gemini and the other tools that they install, but not to install, so you still need to use your account. So this one, Firefox will do that later. Always install your own file, just like one reason or any other. But that's we can always do.
So how will that impact us as accessibility commission? Then will we become? My boss has long time said that he feels like there's some browsers to be able to do all the accessibility stuff, all the interpretation that the user needs in order to. And so the browser should be able to take care of a bunch of this stuff that the developers neglect to do. And I said, well, Wes, it doesn't really work like that. And it may never work like that, but may it work like that? What do you think?
I have no idea, I've talked too much, but maybe.
In the microphone,
In the microphone, thank you. Okay, am I going on there? Okay, good. I think that, you know, the stingy bosses, okay, so we got all that, that's true. But, I don't think an AI could do a good accessibility analysis without a person prompting it to look at the right things. I mean, there's a lot of the automatic stuff you can look for it, you know, but I just really don't think. Because I was writing a program last week with AI and, you know, I knew the questions I wanted to ask that AI. It couldn't have written that program if I hadn't asked it the right questions. Okay, and that's where when he talks about this prompt engineering, it's about structuring how you ask for things, like, and like when I would work with it, I'll say, okay, I have a whole bunch of things, and don't write the program until you understand what I want. And then I'll go through and kind of do it chunk by chunk so I can understand, and then I say, do you understand what I just said? And it'll go, yes, here, this, and this, and a lot of times it's right, and every so often it goes, you know, and every so often I put an ambiguous thing in there, and I went, oh my God, I didn't know I could interpret it that way. You know, but the thing is that if you converse with the AI, what it's gonna do is, I mean, it's gonna enhance your accessibility knowledge, and it won't really have that knowledge. And the Chat GPT, to me, what I've noticed when they talk about it is it's like, you know, there's all these web pages, and there's this theorem in statistics called the central limit theorem. And, you know, when you get enough samples, you get a normal distribution. Okay, we got billions of samples, right? So it's really normal. And then they kind of pick everything kind of close to the mean. And that's what they know. And then so that's what they're gonna know about your accessibility, but you're gonna know some subtle facts. It doesn't know about, you put it in their memory and then they'll help you. So, sorry if I dominated.
I just wanted to briefly answer the question that you came up with before about books that don't immediately jump into code. So this is a book by James Phoenix and Mike Taylor called Prompt Engineering. The full title is actually Prompt Engineering for Generative AI. And for example, it has as its first chapter the 5 principles of prompting: give direction, specify format, provide examples, evaluate quality, and divide labor. So those are five principles of prompting that it just discusses in plain English. Now, it later goes into the code, so, but they all do as far that, I mean, I can't think of any that don't eventually. But this is one that doesn't immediately, so I think it's suited for the purpose you were talking about.
What you mentioned about the browser. So I feel like that's kind of, we're already seeing that with the overlays, right? Like that is kind of what the overlays are, like, oh, we'll take completely inaccessible code and make it accessible for you. And we've seen that that's not really how that works, right? And so I can't imagine like a browser being able to turn some of the systems that I see, the code behind those systems are so convoluted and so like nowhere near like a drop down, right? Like, how did you get this? I mean, it kind of looks like a drop down when it's working on the page, but I don't know how you got there with this code. So I think going from that to like somehow the browser being able to sort of overlay, fix it. I don't see that coming, but I think that I think, and maybe I'm kind of cynical about it just because of all the different systems I see and just doing the testing is like, I think we're a long way from an AI that can take some of the code bases for these major companies and systems that are using thousands of systems and being able to just automatically fix those or address those. test them or fix them. So I think we've got at least, I'm kind of older, so maybe I'll be okay for a while, but maybe the kids, it's always about the kids, right? What are they gonna do?
I gave a wrong name before and I saw some people taking screenshots. So the correct name is deeplearning.ai, not deep AI.
Keep learning. I mean, it's, I can't believe that it's the year 2025, talking about AI. And we still have to ask people to code the goddamn skip link. How hard is it for the browser to let the user
A
skip
skip
to the main
link.
content of a page? It's unbelievable. We invented the main landmark. It's in the spec in 2013. We expected browsers to offer keyboard navigation to it. And still we're not seeing this.
Yeah.
Goes to show that AI is maybe not as powerful as we think it is. And I know we all want jobs and paychecks and security. That's a luxury, but seriously, if these overlays had worked, I would have been so happy.
Yeah.
But I tried overlay after overlay, and I swear it made the websites worse, almost all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what you just said is a really good point of what I'm kind of like pessimistic about what AI is going to be able to do. Like I thought, like I don't worry we're gonna make a matrix of 35 or another quarter. But some of the things that have come up, if why I think we're not going to all do their jobs is because like our knowledge of what's.
Can you scroll down in the chat?
You can write, have AI write, program, that's fine until there's a bug. And someone needs to fix the bug, the AI gets the bug, right? Someone has to know how to actually write the code to fix the bug. And as we've seen, like with especially with a lot of accessible tech and with the web in general, there's so many layers of interactions between different kinds of software. Like the problems get like complex like really, really quickly. And the complexity is like scaled up. And being able to like troubleshoot those things, I think is gonna be, that's like a gargantuan challenge. But, and finally, like the last thing though is that a lot of our problems are like human problems, they're not technology problems. In writing code, the biggest problem is often like writing the requirements. Like it's trying to figure out what the person wants me to write the program about. Like, that's the hardest thing is like they say like do this, it's like what did they really want? And you do something, you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted, that wasn't the only thing. And just like with the skip link, like how hard is it to put a skip link? It's like it's trivial to put it in. Like, but someone has to know that you want it, and someone has to know what it's supposed to point to, like which part, like maybe like not every page should skip the same thing. There's lots of human things that like experts know, and I think it'll be hard to automate because just from what I've learned from the accessibility community, like every time I come here and almost every single session, I learn a new thing that I didn't know before. Right? This is about a new person's experience that I didn't consider because it's not an experience that I have. Right? And like AIs don't have any experience at all. They're computers. They don't have senses, they don't have bodies. Like they don't know all the things that all the different ways that people can use computers and all the ways that you can break them. So I think that even at the end of the day, like there's going to need to be experts to verify and then fix any issues that the AIs miss because they will.
I thought maybe you can leave the.
Yeah, so interesting comments by Jake Costa in the chat. Google's prompt engineering white paper and I guess a book by Jay Berryman and A. Ziegler. I don't know that one. Prompt engineering for LLMs are really good and do not focus on coding. I'll check those out. And then also try asking an LLM how many R's are in the word strawberry. I just ran it and it says there are 2, LOL. Companies adopting AI too quickly will regret it when things start breaking and no one knows why it broke because AI did something. And there are many ways you can trip up an LLM, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally and unnoticed. I mean, people are so frequently approaching accessibility as checking a box, I can't imagine that those same people are going to check the work of the LLM that does it for them.
There was a HTML help on website and they posted investigation in how they were asking ChatGPT to create accessible button. And it was not doing well even with the proper prompt, like, hey, provide me accessible button. It provided button, type button, area label, text here, and the on-screen text in there. So, and then they were like, well, don't use area label. So there were many, many layers how was not doing well. And I want to ask if anyone has used I think DQ introduced the AI chatbot to do the accessibility work, and there was a video, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. They were promoting, like, there was a engineer, probably developer sitting on the computer, sending patch in GitHub, submitting the PR. And the AI replied like, well, did you check accessibility? And the developer was like, oh yeah, let me go back and I need to add how can I add alternative text. And I used to work for the digital accessibility agency. I work with developers now. Not everyone, okay, more people know about alt text. They might know what is alt text and how to ask for it, or at least they heard it. But when you ask, what did you think about accessibility? Like, what will they say? They'll say, oh, yes, I did. I added alt text to this div. What else do I need to do? So have you had experience with that? What do you think about it? And I think there was a hand, right?
There is a good blog by a developer called Craig Abbott about his first experience with the Access system. So it's craigabbott.com. CRAIGABBOTT.com. He gives it about 80%. There's some things it did well, some things it did not so well. But it's probably better than most, but yeah, it was not 100%. I can send, if there's any group, I can send the exact URL, but if you Google Craig Abbott Access Assistant, you'll find it.
Thank you. But again, like this chat, you need to ask, you need to know what to ask. General question about accessibility. And also example of a button, it's an easy one, to be honest. Like when we work with huge data tables that have multiple controls in them and the options with, remove, edit, and whatnot. Or some mixture of combo form with different complex validation and other things. Like this is where sometimes I might know what to ask to this chat, but a lot of engineers and designers, especially when they're just learning to be better at accessibility, they might be like missing out, and there are different layers. You can provide some like baseline accessibility, but then there's like how you can again make it delightful for users to use.
Yeah.
No.
I would love to. I would love to build a chatbot around a design system. I think those two would go together very well. If you focus your chatbot on how to write accessibility into some component that you've created, then you have this internal information, but you could save yourself so much support time by just automating that task.
So as instructors, go ahead and give it to him. But I'm just going to say something briefly while you're giving it to him. We're being encouraged at University of Texas to make lesson plans with a retrieval augmented generation LLM that has our textbook in it, so students can have a conversation with the textbook instead of reading, because we know that students don't read the textbook. So they found empirically that students will have a conversation with the textbook.
The thing that I wanted to bring up that I have as a fear regarding this discussion is that at some point, like access or AI tools, or it'll be something like the accessibility overlay, like they'll become good enough at certain things, but they'll be adopted, or like in the public imagination or in the CEO imagination, they'll become good enough that people say like, that if we buy this AI tool, that makes us compliant, and we don't have to do anything else. We don't have to test, we don't have, like, and they're like legally protected, and then there's nothing we can do about it. So I think that's the kind of thing that, as a community, people need to be watching out for, like, to make sure that you don't get those situations where we're making accessibility worse because people think they solved the problem of accessibility.
For now, we can quote the accessibility lawsuit and decision. That they had to pay a fine because of false advertising.
Could you say that again for the
Okay.
audience
Yeah, I mean, we can
out there?
quote the recent decision to fine Accessibility $1 million for their 100% accessibility claim as proof that AI just isn't there yet. I mean, at least, of course, we will be able to refer to that in a year, but at least now we have pretty clear evidence that AI is not going to solve accessibility at the moment.
Just a comment with anything, I could, here at school, part of the community, rants about AI, all about how it's a tool, but it's not necessarily it's just, the tool is as good as its user. And but also the evolution of how usable things became. When we first started with the command line, and things were hard to do. And finally, things kind of the technology evolved. Then we went back to the command line again with search. And then search was pretty hard to use, and eventually Google came along and solved that. And now it seems like we're back to the command line again. Where things are hard, and then things are going to, where we're going to be 6, 18 months, 5 years, 10 years from now, because things evolve. What sort of a progression have you seen in terms of usability or just making things easier? Have you seen anything that's notable?
What you made me think of was the fact that when I was a little child, my father came home from work one day and said he had just been to a presentation that showed that programmers would no longer be necessary. And this was in the late 1960s or early 1970s. And, predictions of the future aren't what they used to be. In terms of usability, the usability of AI is not strong right now. So is that what you're getting at, the usability of AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, the usability of AI is not strong because even people who have read up on it, have studied it, have tried to do things with it, still can't always get it to do what they want. So that's by definition not usable. So there hasn't been a tremendous amount of progress on the usability, but Don Norman, the famous usability expert, said usability is always going to be behind the technology. It's never going to catch up, and you have to get used to that fact. It's much easier to code an AI than to make it usable. So what I'm hearing from a lot of you is that AI is not going to replace us anytime soon. That it's going to help some of us. Senior software engineers, there are just studies coming out in the last month or so on senior software engineers using AI. And it's making them more productive, and the companies are absorbing the benefits of that, rather than the individuals absorbing the benefits of that. So it's a repeat of history in many ways. The people aren't being replaced, they're simply being made to do more work for the same money.
I agree. So I'm trying to train the ChatGPT instance that we have that says that it doesn't use this data to train its models, and it's private for the company. I'm trying to train it to help me write proper bug descriptions. When I find something, I usually have a note that high contrast mode for the button has wrong outline color, for instance. And for me, that would be sufficient if I needed to go and fix the bug, but I'm not gonna do this because I'm working on other project. So I want to go and have a bug. And those designers and engineers who look at it, they probably won't okay, what are the steps to reproduce? What is expected behavior? They might not know how the button high contrast mode should look like, what the system color to use. So I pulled all of the bugs that I filed, created the XML, uploaded it into my ChatGPT instance, and asked it to review it and only look for, like, when there was a comment with this one and it was written by me as a user. Pull this, then I asked to give me a couple of examples, it gave me example. And I was like, okay, again, to check that it did understand. And now I'm like, maybe first bug, if there are a couple of bugs in the same place, I don't want to let it know more steps to reproduce. Because sometimes you need to toggle something or hit this button. Then I'll give it once and then like, okay, another bug on the same page is this. And it will give me something. And it still will sneak its hallucinations here and there. I cannot just copy paste it. I still use time to read it, understand it, and then edit. Because I will provide that. I will describe by for error message. And it would add an additional recommendation to use ARIA Live. I was like, no, FYI, dear chat. We're not recommending this ARIA Live for this instance. And it would say, oh yeah, understood this, thank you. And I'm trying to approach it as I'm training my junior colleagues and mentors. And even one day it will be writing proper description. It's already saving me time, so it's not that I'm not spending 10 minutes writing whole thing over and over, or go into Notepad, copying it, then inserting it, editing it. It does it for me, it saves me time, then I can go and do some more complex work, like what I can go and fix the bugs and things like that. So I'm hopeful that this might help me as a professional, but yeah, I'm sure that there will be probably some, C-level managers will be like, oh, it's doing it, we don't need to, because then we can ask the same ChatGPT to go and fix the bug.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, I wrote a blog post for our company about generative AI a couple of years ago when it was just coming out. And our business manager had asked me to write one about whether ChatGPT will replace copy editors. The people who write the copy for websites and things like that. And so at that point, I went and I set, ChatGPT to a couple different tasks and kind of evaluated and saw what I thought, is this viable or not? And at the time, my conclusion was, well, if I were a copywriter and I gave ChatGPT a prompt, it would give me something that I could then work with, and that would probably save me time. Kind of like what she was saying, it would save me time. And at that point, I said, so the dream is that yes, this new technology will save us all, us humans, time, so that maybe we don't have to work 40 hours a week. Maybe we can cut it down to 30 hours and still produce the same amount. And so our employers can still, get their bottom line. Maybe that's a little idealistic and.
Yes.
Yep, and it's okay to be right.
Why 30? Let's go with 20.
My hope is that would happen in the future, but who knows if that's likely or possible.
I had an idea. The WCAG, understanding WCAG, it's like just this dense, immense thing. I think, for those that are AI people, to have it go, okay, can you look at understanding WCAG to solve this problem? Might be a really good application, because we worked really hard and wrote a lot of code that would solve, you don't think so?
I give you example, I agree with you and I will give you example.
Okay.
I didn't think to interrupt you, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I tried to do this, actually, one of
Oh,
my
you-
colleagues, put in again, ChatGPT, like, hey, this is the WTC area document, this is the regard, please review them and only use those documents and documents hosted in WTC. And then it's like, hey, you can use it for Chrome. And I was like, okay, let me ask something. Because I wanted to check if it's, using 2.2 or 2.1. And I was like, hey, how can you, in the what can you tell me how the focus should look like to be accessible? And I asked it to also, my colleague included it to every time when you give an answer, provide references to specific criteria. And it's providing me guidance, which is good, okay, following, but then in the 3 references it gives me the success criteria that has never been, I don't remember, but it's like it's non-existent. And the number is like, I don't know, 215 or something, like there is no such thing. And I'm like, okay, maybe, maybe I missed some update. I know it's website, it's not there, of course, I just wanted to check. Yeah. But it also gives you a link to the success criteria. I was like, well, let's see. So it did create the success criteria with this number. But when you go to this, it kind of throws you to the general with that. So because it's like it's hard, right? So it goes, so if I didn't know that this was a hallucination, I would be like, yeah, that's reference that included be part.
To some extent, you can limit the likelihood of hallucinations in ChatGPT. So you could ask its parameters, and one of the parameters is called temperature. And temperature is a continuum from maximum creativity to minimum creativity. And with maximum creativity, you have a higher likelihood of hallucinations, and with minimum creativity, you have less likelihood of hallucinations, but also less interesting results. And a good balance, there's a standard temperature that's set for you, but you can change that temperature if you're getting too many hallucinations. And if you change it too much, you might not get very interesting results. But if you change it a little bit, tweak it, you might get a better experience.
How do you do that?
You just ask ChatGPT about its parameter.
But do you say, let's change your temperature?
Oh, no, there's a specific command for changing the temperature, but I can't remember the command, so I'm saying ask it what the specific command for changing the temperature is. Yeah.
And then it'll tell me that I can use that to.
I don't know, in ChatGPT in particular, I use a number of models, and some of them you have to do it before the session starts. And it may be the case in ChatGPT on the control panel, you can do it before the session starts. I don't remember. But it should tell you where to go to set the temperature. And you may have to start a new conversation.
In that Gemini by Google, it's pretty straightforward in UI. And I think there's a slider. And there is some recommendation, I don't remember, but somehow I think that the recommendation was to hold it under 10%, but I'm not sure. So, don't go to maximum, you will have 16, 17.
Okay, so a lot of hallucinations. Do you guys want to share what you're saying to everybody?
Oh, sure, I will share, because we were having lunch and I was saying, I don't know the first thing about AI, and I didn't know prompt engineering was a thing, like I've never heard of that before. And I was like, I really wish I could just learn about that, and I've learned a lot about just
Okay, good.
this, along with our discussion that we were having, so that's what I was saying, because we were talking about it a bunch, so
Cool.
very, very sidebar.
So yeah, I think the problem that you raised about the CEO saying we can just replace them is it's important to document these cases where they can't replace you, because it is hard for CEOs to understand a lot of things. I mean, CEOs I saw a study that said most CEOs are very similar in many ways, similar to each other. And the good ones, the ones that are successful, are very similar to the bad ones, which is kind of makes you wonder why they get paid so much. But because of this problem that they're sort of engineered to deal in a certain realm, they're not engineered to deal in the nuts and bolts realm that we're dealing with. So you have to somehow communicate to them. I think, one effect of AI is it's going to make the ones who don't get fired better communicators. Because you're going to have to be a better communicator to explain to them why, the AI isn't doing the job. Somebody in one of the previous presentations, was it in the keynote or wherever, where the guy was saying that they fired the entire staff and then they had to rehire them later because they got so many complaints. Not only in accessibility, yeah.
But before.
From a friend of Boston consulting company, they fired a bunch of graphic designers when AI came out. Sure, I think we hired some of them back. Human resources people, a lot of them were fired. There seems to be that, your chief executive officer, they execute. So they make decisions based on, what they think is here and what they can do. But I gotta think there's a reaction the other way.
Yeah. It is so hard to get some graphics. So try this experiment. So I teach one of the courses that I teach is in statistics, and I have a particular statistic that students have a hard time understanding called the F statistic. And it has a characteristic curve and some numbers that go along with it that fall along the baseline of it, and some regions under the curve that correspond to those baseline numbers. So I want from a Gen AI tool that generates images, I want an animation that shows the baseline number changing and what the effect on the region under the curve is as a result. And I've tried this on many, Midjourney and DALL-E and all these AI tools that generate images. And none of them have succeeded so far. At least when I've tried it, I haven't gotten a sufficient result. But, people like AT&T were generating graphics to explain math and statistics 50 or 60 years ago using hand-drawn animations that were superb.
I have something, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think a promising career field for AI might be high school teachers. And the reason why I say this is because I have a teenager in high school. 3 of his teachers are coaches, and they have told their students, I don't know this subject, I'm just here because I have to be.
Wow.
They're underpaid. So many teachers, and my son tells me, he's like, I didn't learn anything today. My teacher was on the phone and said we could just look at her phone or watch TV. Or
Wow.
watch a movie. So
What school is this?
It's Georgetown. I live in Georgetown. It's a nice area, supposedly good school district, but apparently it's happening in a lot of places.
This is Georgetown around Washington, D.C. you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, Georgetown, Texas. Oh, okay.
It's a really good middle upper class neighborhood with really crappy teachers, high school teachers.
Wow.
Well, that was
Yeah.
happening back in 1988, almost in fourth class.
Yeah, so, I think maybe if we could program a robot to discipline and actually teach kids and get them involved and want to learn, I think it could be something. Because I thought, well, I would love to homeschool my child, but I don't have time, right? Like if there could be some kind of medium for that.
Teacher AI.
Yeah, teacher AI. I'm gonna go.
One important question for those students is what motivates them? So a really good teacher can motivate them, but can a really good bot motivate them?
Right, give it some creativity, give it a sense of humor. Yeah, like give it a personality plus intriguing and charismatic. Yeah.
But to be fair, those teachers are the exception, certainly not the rule, but, and there is kind of art and science to teaching, but so much of teaching now is so formatted, to where you have to teach X, Y, and Z there, yes. And you test, you can get, there may be something to it.
Yeah.
I won't send my kids there.
I have a toddler as well, and I'm like, he's not going to any, the school district at all.
Yeah,
I'm just
I can
focused-
understand that.
You
Yeah.
know, and I remember in school, I always had homework. My son has never had homework for the last 5 years.
Oh my
Ever.
God.
Yeah, and he's a freshman. Ever. So, yeah, exactly. They're not, they don't have any books. They're, you know, doing everything online. I think AI could really
Mm.
step up and do something different because the kids are, you know, even their textbooks are not good.
Mm.
Yes, they're not.
But the root cause, it sounds to me, is that the teachers are underpaid so that the talented people aren't going to do it. So anybody who's underpaid might be in danger. Those of you who are not from Austin have probably seen the Waymo self-driving cabs. They have a better safety record than cab drivers by far, by far. That's a job that's being replaced.
There was one close to me last night when I was getting ready to order a car and I was like, I don't want that, so I'm gonna wait just a minute.
They have a great safety record.
That's what I was told by someone that did take one.
It was driving smoothly. I was like, it's much better than, I mean, I might drive similarly because it's like more cautious, but for example, my brother-in-law, like, you know, like way more anytime. I was saying that the way more was driving so smoothly and, you know, with braking and like making sure to stop like before on the road and then like such. But it was great.
Hi. There are plenty of places to sit if you want to take my elbow. I can direct you to, whoops, I'm sorry, I was just trying to cross in front of you. I can-
Try to trip you there. I've got to make a dramatic entrance, you know.
Yeah. So just, you're at the start of a table here. If you go just beyond the table and to your right, there's a chair.
I must say, I heard it was gonna be in 113, the future of AI, so I went there and I opened the door and I said, no one here, and I'm like, well, we just have them. Yeah, that is.
I was talking about combiners should replace or AI should replace teachers because high school student that's not learning much. But I was gonna comment on the Waymo thing. I work downtown and I am never afraid that the Waymo is going to run me over when I'm crossing the street. He stops, so yeah, all the other cars, obviously, I'm like, you know, are they gonna run? I need to walk faster, or do they see me? But the Waymo always sees, and I notice like it gives me time, you know, it doesn't feel like it's rushing me and going when I'm trying to walk past the stop sign. It waits until I'm actually on the curb before it goes, so it's pretty neat. And I know it has probably 1,000 cameras all around it, so.
It's not cameras, it's actually LiDAR. So Elon Musk's system relies on cameras, and it does have a poor safety record.
There was no drive, so someone just like decided to suddenly start driving across the street. I was like, we're gonna hit it, like just on the way here. And the person was like, hey, no. But the car slowed down and didn't hit the thing. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I would drive in, like, if I would react that fast, because again, it came out of nowhere. But also, I looked at the cameras and they have those little, like, the cones. And I'm looking at an intersection, it's showing some cones on the side. It's like, I don't know, cones. Look at, here they are. I see on the camera leader showing 5. I can see only 4. I was like, I caught you. And then I started moving, I realized that I moved. I realized that there's the one behind, so they're in the 5. So yeah. Nice meeting you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Talk to me.
Okay, will do. Did you have more you wanted to?
No, she just.
Who else wants to speak? We've gone kind of far afield. But it is all connected. Oh, I don't need this.
Like, or like say far field. I kind of think that maybe like what should happen with like AI and teaching is like the opposite direction, is that, you know, we're kind of at a weird point where, like, if your education is something that an AI can like pass your class, then maybe it's not a very good class, right? Like my wife is a professor, and she has to deal with like students writing AI papers or using AI to do homework. If your assignments are something that can be done with an AI, they're probably like this, they're not a good, your assignments are a good ruler to like what people are actually learning, right? So like there was like a time, and maybe like in other countries, like if you're gonna pass an exam for a class, you have to go and talk to you sit down across from the professor and you talk for like an hour, and they see whether you know what you're talking about or not. Like maybe that's a model, like that also brings more people being employed, right? Not being unemployed by AI. But it requires like a radical kind of reorganization of how we think about education.
So I was a classroom teacher for a lot of years, high school English, and in a past life. The coaches were there then too. No offense to sports and schools, but some people went to teaching school so they could be a high school coach, maybe as a stepping stone to another coaching career. But that's what they're interested in. That's why they went. And you know, it depends. The history department was filled with them in the school I was in. I mean, that seemed to be where they went to. Now, I don't think they were just sitting around not teaching. They were doing some sort of teaching. But I was gonna look at you and see what you were talking about. What did you just say?
What did I just say?
My short-term memory just lost.
Yeah. No, I was saying that if an AI can complete your assignments and pass the class, then like it's not the right kind of assignment.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was gonna, this I didn't make up, but it reminded me of when I go to some teaching conferences still, and people were turning in AI papers, and a teacher came up with this idea, and I thought it was brilliant, and you can pass it on to your wife, is after they bring the paper, and maybe they did use AI to assist, but in class assignment for that paper is to outline the paper in front of the teacher and go through what did the paper say, and then, you know, yeah, make a human effort at your own paper and see if you do know what it was about.
Yeah, I think sometimes English assignments were given in the past to make sure that a student read a particular book or a particular story. And that the technique for doing that doesn't work anymore. But the root thing of did they actually read the Red Badge of Courage or whatever it is that they're supposed to have read, that root thing still does exist. We still want them to have read these books. So we need another way to find out if they've done that.
You know, when you teach computer science, a lot of times you have people work in groups. And you really have to kind of have everybody present and explain their code to you. Because, you know, and sometimes you look and go, oh, this person did all the work and these people were floaters, you know?
Right.
But yeah, that face to face is so important. But I was thinking what would be really interesting with the chat things would be that they had to turn in their conversations with chat.
Yeah, I've tried to get students to do that, and they're embarrassed to.
Oh.
They give the briefest documentation they can when I ask for documentation. You know, I think one thing that I'm getting from this whole conversation is that jobs that have a low ceiling, like cab drivers, there's only a certain amount of stuff that a cab driver needs to learn to drive a cab can be replaced completely by AI. But accessibility consultants have a very high ceiling. There are very few accessibility consultants who know everything, maybe none who know everything about accessibility. There's so much more that you could do if you had a powerful assistant. And so I think you're going to find that there are certain jobs that get empowered, like senior software engineers. You know, junior software engineers are screwed. Junior software engineers are in big trouble, which is eating your seed corn, you know, firing the junior software engineers so they never become senior software engineers. And the same thing may be true for accessibility consultants. The senior ones are going to be more powerful. The junior ones may be indistinguishable from AI. That's a big problem. What do we do to level up the junior accessibility consultants?
My best high school civics teacher was a coach.
Coaches is, that was my son.
There is that. I had some friends.
Yeah, so, totally late to the party, so someone might have mentioned this, but, two interactions kind of stick out. One of which I was having with, someone a couple of weeks ago who's from, I'm gonna get the country wrong, it was Poland, New Zealand, something like that, something over there. But he was telling me, he was like, AI hasn't really impacted our, higher education, and I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, so much of what we do is interactive anyway, that it's people talking to each other about the things that they're learning, and they learn from interactions and experiences, right? And you kind of look weird if you pull out a chatbot in the middle of a social conversation. And the other thing too is there's a couple different founders, quite a few actually, and their entire idea is teachers become, and we can kind of draw a parallel to accessibility here, but teachers become content curators, and they essentially act as librarians, and look over the things that students are reading. But you take all the terribleness that is TikTok and I probably offended some people with that one. But that is like the endless dopaminergic scrolling that happens, right? You turn that into how do we use the reward centers of the human brain to capitalize on the type of education that someone will find really interesting. And that way, it doesn't have to be something you have to fight to learn. You're learning in the way that your brain actually does best. So I don't know, just two kind of ideas. I draw that back to accessibility a little bit. Maybe we become more curators of information that is good versus bad, as opposed to extremely highly opinionated people who have maybe one idea of how something should work.
Cool.
Mr. Michael, can I weigh in?
Of course you can. You already did very briefly, but why don't you weigh in?
Okay, so I'm looking at the age group in here and I'm younger. I want to kind of weigh in a little bit on the conversation as far as like AI and education. Part of me feels like we're doomed because if we think about like how much, you know, when you started off like in your careers and people that you know that do engineering and work with computers and stuff like that, how they had to start at the beginning and learn so much. And we made it to where things got easier in the workplace. And so the kids these days aren't putting in like the hard work anymore. And so we've worked to where we've made things so much easier, but they aren't working their brains in a way to learn how to use the product that you've all created, that you've all helped develop. And so since they're not exercising their brains in that way, and they don't know how to do the math, they don't know what these numbers mean, and it's a lot of laziness. Like you guys, and I feel like my generation have been exposed to like hard work, put the work in. And so with them, not so much. So once we make everything so much easier and we still need humans on the back end to do this work, who is gonna do it? Like which, 3 or 4 kids that actually paid attention and had that mindset, it's not gonna be everybody, but it will be a few. Can we put them in those places to help develop and continue to develop? Because my niece couldn't pronounce diameter correctly, and she's literally in the class, and I'm helping her with her algebra. And I'm like, if you guys are the new doctors and pediatricians and software, we are doomed. So it was just really disappointing. And like people from all over, like with Canada, and the lady from earlier was from Ireland. Like there's so much work done, in accessibility in every other area. And it's just been people doing that. And so we're gonna need people later on. And I just feel like we're not gonna have any of those people because, I mean, like she said, the kid has had no homework.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Brain at school or at home. What are we gonna do? Like when you guys die off?
Yeah,
It's gonna it's
right, it's gonna happen, yeah.
Older person now.
glad to be
Okay.
in love.
So, all talk about the lady.
I guess I'll say before, baby rules are written on millennials and Gen Z people that the same thing. I mean, I remember going to a communication design class and there's all these fancy Photoshop things and there's teachers who were like, oh, I did this on a drafting board and, it was the letter forms with, to an extent, I haven't had to do that, but what people of a certain generation don't see is that there is a progression. It's very gradual, but people get better with age when they assimilate. But to your point, yeah, there's a gap in the work, but there's also a maturity, and psychologists will tell you that people who were 18 years old in 1960, in 1980, they were probably 19. There's a maturity gap basically to where, like people who are 24 years old right now have a maturity level of 18. But 20 years before, people who are 20 have a maturity level of 18. So there is kind of a psychological thing playing here. But there's also, people are still gonna age, and they still have to get to that maturity level as they get older. It's just different now, the level of effort to achieve things. I mean, I want to be a comic book artist, but I didn't have the tools that were back there in 1980 to figure out, okay, here's this clip art, I can do this, and then I'll sketch on top of it. It's enabling more, and I think you talked about that earlier, to what people can achieve. You're paid more, or you're paid the same, but to do more as that capability comes. The capability is going to come to make it executed. But things are just, they always change.
I agree with you on that. When my son was 6, and he's grown up with the iPad, and we were out at dinner and the waitress left her little kiosk for us to pay on it. And he took a picture of himself and he replaced her kiosk image with his face. And I'm thinking, how did you do that? You're 6 years old, and I wouldn't be able to do that. And it's because, kids are more technologically advanced because they're growing up with this. So I do think that they are adapting, and we'll still make it through. Yeah. But there are issues.
There's always going to be shortcuts.
Yeah.
Don't maybe you're building a better user experience. If even a 3-year-old can operate the iPhone, how is it trouble?
Did you want to say more about that?
No.
No, okay. Well, just repeat it for the
There's a bunch of people on Zoom.
Notice that maybe it's also just a testament to our user experience design, especially, I know I had kids that were using iPads when they're 3, 4 years old. Give them a DOS computer, they will try to eat it at best. So maybe we just made a lot of progress in technology and interaction, and I give Apple some credit for that. Or just everybody.
Actually, my daughter could use Linux when she was 3 or 4 years old. And the reason was the reward system. So she could use Linux to watch Disney movies. So I set it up so that she had to use the Linux command line in order to watch Disney movies. And she very quickly learned.
I was very fortunate to work with, one of the one of the very first computers on John von Neumann's machine in Santa Monica.
Wow.
Called Q7. But okay, so now we're talking about all this stuff. They take all the tables in this room. They used to write these flow charts that would go down the table and back and forward. And then they take these circuit boards and they'd wire them for each instruction all the way down like that. Then they'd take them and they'd stick it in this thing called the Q7. And that's how they did the 1950 to 1960 census.
Wow.
And the reason they did that is because using the Hollerith method that came before, they had calculated that they wouldn't be able to finish the 1950 census before 1960. Talking to those old guys was so interesting,
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if we need, to your point, like, to your point, like, by the time they got done wiring all that, they probably could have done a lot more and been way more innovative, but they were too tired, right? So like being able to start at the new point that we start, allows us to go further. So I think that that's actually a good thing. So anyway.
Well, we're getting close to wrap-up time. So does anybody want to start summarizing for us? Not a lot of takers for that.
I think that's your job as the moderator.
Well,
Call out the AI. Yeah.
yeah, I'll ask ChatGPT to summarize. Maybe you can help us,
No.
since you were the first to speak.
So I guess our summary is AI is here to stay, let's use it, and it's probably not going to replace us anytime soon because it has a long ways to go. But we do need to embrace our role, I guess, in monitoring it and working on it to make sure that it's accurate. I don't know. I don't think that was very good.
Okay, let him
Here's someone
try.
else's.
I don't know, I think we've been talking about AI in terms of being a tool and us building a tool, but maybe it's more of a partner. Being in the business with a partnership, we've got to be able to both elevate each other, as you progress.
Thank you. I like that partner. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
AI is inevitably going to. AI is inevitably going to change the way we work. It could change it for the better if it can correctly do all the low-level things that we've been dealing with as experts and give us an opportunity to translate our work from dealing with minutiae and the code and correcting HTML to really being innovative and gathering real usability, working with people to understand what works. But we have to, in order to do that, we are going to have to embrace it instead of resisting it and learning really what it is and its challenges and opportunities.
Anybody else?
I still want to hear your summary.
Okay, I would say that what I've learned here is very much that AI can't do it alone. And that we have to think of the ceiling and the floor of what we do. So the root cause of what we do is to make resources more accessible to people. It is not to ensure compliance with WCAG guidelines. That's not our root cause. So if it turns out that AI is better than us at interpreting WCAG guidelines on a website or something like that, let it. We have higher objectives that AI definitely can't achieve. And I will disagree with you on one thing. You said it'll be a long time. We really don't know how fast AI is going to improve. Everybody who's making predictions is just, that's a placeholder. They don't know. You know, AI may replace us all in 2 years, or it may be in roughly the same state that it is now in 10 years. We really don't know. There's not a good gauge. People always predict the future as a continuation of the past, a straight line continuation of the past, but that never turns out to be the case. You know, just in our own country, Trump came along. You know, who could have predicted that? We don't know what the future holds, but we do know what our root cause is, the thing that we're really trying to do. And we know that currently AI can't do that. And so we have a higher ceiling to what our objectives are than what AI can accomplish alone. So as a partner or as a tool, we can accomplish more with AI than without it. So is that a good summary?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you. Thanks to our tech support.